The palace provides proof, who the doctors were, all signed off, everything signed off. And if they can't do that, because we have a right to know that who is closely in the line of succession is entitled to it. And if they can't do that, I'm afraid those children should be removed from the line of succession forthwith.
Time in the history of the monarchy that this has happened. And therefore, we've all been asking, the doctor's name should be made public. You know that they put that outside with the easel, right? And then Harry, if we go by his narrative and spare, he says that Meghan Markle went to the hospital, the Portland hospital, and then she humped a ball, that she was put in the bathtub. She was given not one, but 2 epidurals. I am a mom. I have had my child by using an epidural. Doctors will never put you in a bathtub if you have an epidural.
You might think Archie's birth was completely normal, that Meghan Markle gave birth to him just like any other mother, but some serious questions have left even top royal biographers completely speechless. So, did Meghan actually give birth to her children? Because the evidence that's been brought forward, Meghan would have a lot of explaining to do. According to reports, when Meghan was ready to deliver, she headed to the Portland hospital for the birth of Prince Archie of Sussex. She was using a birthing ball and a bathtub, waiting for the moment her water would break and the baby would arrive. Standard stuff, right? Wrong, because something strange went down. Within just 2 hours of arriving at Portland Hospital, they were already back at Frogmore Cottage, their residence connected to Buckingham Palace at the time. 2 hours! Medical experts and commentators found this highly unlikely, because no matter how smooth a natural birth goes, 2 hours is not enough time to clean up the baby, recover the mother, and have everyone packed up and heading home. And where exactly did Meghan get the strength to get up and leave that fast after delivery?
Every royal birth, except for that has been close to the line of succession, with the exception of Archie's and Lilibet's, has been signed off by a host of royal doctors. The only 2 that this has been omitted for, or with, whichever way you want to look at it, have been Archie and Lilibet.
I think that she's much more than that. There's a selfishness there. That was worse than narcissism. That was destructive. She's an agent of destruction. What she said against Britain, everything was just so unfair and wrong. And it was really a dreadful thing what she did and continues to do.
This whole story came straight from Prince Harry's book, Spare, but the numbers just don't add up. Here's what makes it even more suspicious. Royal birth tradition requires that the doctors who delivered the baby are publicly honoured. When the palace announces a royal newborn, the attending physicians' names are listed right there on the announcement. An independent witness also verifies the birth, no exceptions. This happened with Prince George of Wales and Princess Charlotte of Wales, whose births both publicly named the doctors present.
And then Harry in his book says that within 2 hours of the child being born, they were back at Frogmore Cottage. Those are his words. Those are not my words. Those are his. If that is the case, that means that this woman with not 1 but 2 epidural, with a very difficult birth, geriatric, was literally cleaned up. The baby was smacked, wrapped, put in a van, and sent back, because it takes almost an hour from Portland Hospital to go to Frogmore Cottage. So that means that they were, within an hour, they were back at Frogmore Cottage.
So why was Archie's birth handled so differently? When Archie was born on the 6th of May 2019, something felt off from the very start. The birth announcement included the time, the weight, even the hospital name, but the doctor who delivered him, nowhere to be found. And on top of that, there was reportedly no independent witness to confirm the birth even took place. This wasn't just a small oversight, it broke royal tradition entirely. Critics were quick to point out that removing the doctor's name wiped out any independent verification. The only source the public had to rely on was statements coming directly from Harry and Meghan themselves. That's it. And then things got even more suspicious with how Harry and Meghan handled royal security around the birth. Royal protocol is clear: the moment labor begins, the monarch gets notified immediately, and the birth location goes into full security lockdown. Royal blood is protected at all costs, but reports suggest those protocols were completely skipped, and that the Queen reportedly found out about the birth from the news, not from Harry or Meghan directly. The Portland hospital reportedly refused to release any information, citing patient privacy, so no independent medical confirmation was ever shared publicly.
Every royal birth, except for that has been close to the line of succession, with the exception of Archie's and Lilibet's, has been signed off by a host of royal doctors.
And here's the thing: before any child enters the royal line of succession, the birth is supposed to be verified. But with Archie, the only confirmed witness was Harry himself. And that kind of witness? Not independently verifiable. But the questions didn't stop with Archie. They followed his sister, Princess Lilibet Diana, born in 2021, this time at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. A different country, a different hospital. Some believe Harry switched locations specifically to keep certain details away from public scrutiny. Her birth certificate, which should be the gold standard of proof, looked different from typical official documents. And strangely, almost no one from the public could confirm they had ever seen an official verified copy. The questions kept coming, and they weren't slowing down. If the birth certificate presented was questionable, then what actually confirms that Lilibet was officially born in that hospital? As things stand, many say there is still no publicly confirmed independent verification, none. The obstetrician reportedly connected to Lilibet's birth, Dr. Melissa, was eventually identified.
Now, royal births are supposed to be, the details have to be made public because they have to reassure the United Kingdom that they meet the legal requirements to be in the line of succession, right? So, and we know that the only living witness to Archie's birth is Prince Harry. Who else? We don't know anybody else.
But then something totally unexpected happened. Shortly after the birth, she shut down her entire medical practice with almost no notice. That's beyond strange. Helping bring a royal-connected baby into the world is normally a career highlight, a moment of pride and public honor. So why walk away so fast? Now, back to Archie, because things there were just as messy. At the time of his birth, Harry and Meghan were still working royals, even though they were already quietly planning their exit from the family. Here's where it gets really interesting. Archie's original birth certificate listed Meghan's personal name, which seemed normal at first, but then an amendment was made, removing her personal name and replacing it with royal titles instead. Technically legal under the Births and Deaths Registration Act of 1953, but highly unusual in practice. Some believe this move was strategic, that Meghan wanted to lock in royal recognition for her child, in case the palace ever tried to distance itself from him. Smart move or suspicious cover?
If a royal lady who's about to give birth, there's 2 phone calls that the security team makes. One to the palace to inform Her Majesty that, she's gone into labor. And 2, that to the security, the head of security, to secure the premises where they go. Harry claims that they didn't do any of that. That means that the Royal Police Protection Officers violated security protocol.
You decide. And through all of this, Sussex communications and palace officials allegedly offered very little in the way of clear explanation. The inconsistencies just kept stacking up. When people heard these explanations, many walked away more confused than before. And honestly, can you blame them? The answers felt vague, carefully worded, and deliberately hard to pin down. Nothing was clear, nothing was direct, and nothing gave the public the closure they were looking for. As time went on, the questions never faded. If anything, they grew louder. More people started paying attention, more researchers started digging, and more royal watchers started connecting dots that the palace seemed desperate to keep separated. The public kept demanding clarity, and instead, they kept getting silence, or worse, carefully packaged statements that raised even more questions than they answered. Let's start with the isolation. During her pregnancy, Meghan made choices that raised eyebrows across the board.
Let me rephrase that. I want to be careful how I put this. Provide the proof to the world that those children were born in such a way that no questions can be asked, which means they have to provide absolute proof that Meghan bore those children and was delivered of those children herself.
She stepped back from public appearances, limited her exposure, and kept details about her pregnancy tightly controlled. Now, some people will say that's completely understandable. Pregnancy is personal, and any woman has the right to privacy. But here's the thing, Meghan wasn't just any woman. She had stepped into one of the most public institutions in the world. The British royal family operates on transparency, tradition, and public accountability. Every royal birth before hers had followed a pattern that was centuries old. So when Meghan started doing things differently, people noticed and they started asking why. Her mental health journey was something she spoke about openly, and credit where it's due, talking about mental health struggles takes courage. But the timing and the details she chose to share added layers to an already complicated story. She described feeling unsupported, isolated, and overlooked within the palace walls. And when she brought those feelings into the Oprah interview, the conversation took a sharp and unexpected turn straight toward Archie. That Oprah Winfrey interview was one of the most talked about television moments in recent royal history. It sent shockwaves around the world, had people glued to their screens, and dominated headlines for weeks. But here's what many people missed. Buried inside all that drama and emotion were specific claims about Archie that deserved far more scrutiny than they got. The public got so caught up in the larger spectacle that some of the most...
Me and other YouTubers, we have tried to get a copy of the birth certificate for Lily. And I mean, they're expensive. I tried to get 7 times I tried to get it. I sent you the email of what they responded to me. And it's like they can't find the record and they offer me to go to Santa Barbara, which is where the child is supposed to have been born. And maybe I can get it there, right?
Pointed details slipped right past them. During that interview, Meghan revealed that before Archie was born, there were alleged conversations within the royal family about what his skin color might be. She described it as deeply painful, hurtful, and something that stayed with her. The interview was electric, emotional, and powerful, but it also opened a door to questions that many people weren't prepared to walk through. If there were internal concerns about how Archie would look, what does that say about how his identity was being discussed before the world even met him? And more importantly, why bring that specific detail up in a global interview if not to shape how the public would receive the story? Some royal commentators believe the Oprah interview was a masterclass in narrative control. Every word was measured, every revelation was timed, and every emotional moment was placed exactly where it needed to be to generate maximum impact. And it worked. The world reacted exactly as expected. But while everyone was focused on the emotional weight of the interview, fewer people stepped back and asked the harder questions hiding behind the headlines. Now, let's talk about that birth announcement because it tells its own story. When Archie's birth was officially announced by the palace, the statement was shockingly bare. It confirmed that Meghan had delivered safely. It listed the baby's weight. It confirmed that Harry was present, and that was essentially it. No physician listed, no independent medical details, no structured verification of the kind that had always accompanied royal births before.
And the doctor that delivered Lily, according to what is out there, Lily was born on June 4th, 2021. This doctor with a thriving practice suddenly quit on June 20th. She sent I think it was June 20th or 21st. She sent an email or a notice to all her patients that she was quitting out of the blue. The interesting part is that her husband has a very, very popular fertility clinic.
Compare that to the announcement made when Prince George was born. The statement was detailed, structured, and followed every piece of royal protocol to the letter. The attending physicians were named. The hospital was fully confirmed. Independent witnesses were in place. The palace announcement was displayed publicly. as tradition demanded. Everything was done in a way that left zero room for doubt or speculation. The same pattern followed with Princess Charlotte's birth. Again, doctors named, hospital confirmed, protocols followed, traditions honored. The institution made sure the public had everything they needed to feel confident in the authenticity of the birth. No gaps, no missing details, no unanswered questions. So why was Archie's birth handled so completely differently? That's the question that just won't go away. And the more you compare the announcements side by side, the harder it becomes to dismiss the inconsistencies as coincidence or personal preference. Something shifted, and the shift was significant enough that even experienced royal biographers reportedly struggled to find a clean explanation. Then there's the presentation, and this one really got people talking. For generations, the British royal family had followed a specific and beloved tradition. When a royal baby was born, the parents would appear on the steps of the hospital, usually within hours or at most a day of the birth, proudly presenting their newborn to the world. The cameras would be there, the public would be gathered. The moment was shared openly, joyfully, and in real time. Princess Diana did it, Kate Middleton did it 3 times. Both times were celebrated as warm.
Though the Hollywood alum wasn't a fan of her hubby's royal rules, she recently gave a nod to the British family when she changed her name on her son's birth certificate. Meghan Markle made an update to son Archie's birth certificate, taking her first and middle names Rachel Meghan off the document. In the latest copy of the certificate obtained by the UK's The Sun, the former Deal or No Deal model replaced her moniker with Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex.
Human, deeply relatable moments that brought the public closer to the royal family. The tradition wasn't just ceremonial, it was a bridge between the monarchy and the people it represented. But when it came to Archie, that tradition was completely abandoned. He wasn't shown on hospital steps. He wasn't presented in the immediate aftermath of birth. Instead, the world met Archie 2 full days later inside the carefully curated and heavily controlled environment of St. George's Hall at Windsor Castle. The setting was grand, the backdrop was majestic, and the entire event was described as a staged photo opportunity, arranged only after every single detail had been pre-planned and pre-approved. Now, some supporters argued that Harry and Meghan simply wanted privacy, that they were protecting their child, that they had the right to introduce their baby on their own terms. And on a human level, that argument makes sense. But on a royal level, it broke from everything that had come before it, and it broke hard. Because here's what people don't always consider. Royal tradition isn't just about ceremony for the sake of ceremony. These protocols exist because they serve a purpose. They create transparency. They build public trust. They provide a layer of verification that confirms, beyond any reasonable doubt, that everything happened exactly as claimed. When those protocols are skipped, that layer of verification disappears and questions rush in to fill the gap. And the questions about Archie didn't exist in isolation. They connected to a broader pattern that observers had been watching unfold for years. From the moment Harry and Meghan stepped into the spotlight as a couple, they seemed to operate differently from the rest of the royal family. They pushed back against tradition. They challenged protocols. They drew sharp lines between what they would and would not share with the public, while simultaneously using their royal platform to share very specific narratives on their own terms.
Asking those questions, and it is really shameful to me that given I was asking those questions in The Sun, that was published in The Sun, the UK's biggest tabloid newspaper at the time, why did the rest of the mainstream media not pick up on that, given they were all lied to as well, with very, very odd reasons?
That tension between demanding privacy on one hand and controlling public narrative on the other sat at the heart of so many controversies surrounding the couple. And nowhere did that tension feel more charged than around the births of their children. Let's revisit the birth certificate situation because it adds yet another layer to this already complex story. When Archie's birth was registered, his certificate initially listed Meghan by her personal name. That was how it was filed. That was the official record. But then, quietly, and without much public fanfare, an amendment was made. Her personal name was removed, and replaced with royal titles instead. Legally, this was permitted under the Births and Deaths Registration Act of 1953. There's nothing technically illegal about it. But the decision to make that change raised eyebrows for a very specific reason. It felt deliberate. It felt strategic. As if someone wanted to make absolutely sure that Archie's royal identity was locked in and protected, regardless of how the palace chose to formally acknowledge him going forward. Some analysts believe this was Meghan playing the long game, ensuring that no matter what happened between the Sussexes and the palace, her son's royal standing would be documented and undeniable. Others believe it was simply an administrative correction, but given everything else surrounding Archie's birth, even an administrative correction became fuel for speculation. And let's not forget the obstetrician situation, because that story deserves its own spotlight. Dr. Melissa, the physician reportedly connected to Lilibet's birth, was eventually identified by the public after significant investigation. But instead of stepping forward to confirm her role in this historic moment, she did the opposite. She closed her medical practice shortly after the birth, quietly, quickly, and without clear public explanation. Think about what that means for a moment. Delivering a baby connected to one of the most famous families on the planet is the kind of career-defining moment that most medical professionals would talk about for the rest of their lives. It's an honor. It's a milestone. It's the kind of thing that gets mentioned in professional biographies and career retrospectives. So why would someone walk away from their entire practice right after being linked to that moment? What would make a medical professional choose silence and exit over recognition and celebration?
It was actually mandatory, it was law that until 1948, before Prince Charles was born, King George VI said, let's give away with that because, it felt undignified to have, in modern times. So they did away with that because it was law, I believe. But it was in exchange that they were going to make all the details public. I mean, even the Queen was not exempt from this. They put the details of the doctors and, everything on the easel.
Nobody has answered that question cleanly, and the silence around it speaks volumes. Then there's the matter of Portland Hospital, the facility where Archie's birth supposedly took place. When journalists and researchers reached out for confirmation or any form of independent medical documentation, the hospital reportedly declined to release information. Patient privacy was cited as the reason, which is, of course, a standard and legitimate response in most situations. But this wasn't most situations. This was a royal birth. A birth that, according to centuries of tradition, was supposed to come with independent verification built in. A birth that, by the standards of the institution Harry and Meghan were still technically part of at the time, should have been documented, witnessed, and confirmed through established channels. The hospital's silence, however, legally justified, added yet another missing piece to an already incomplete puzzle. Now, step back and look at the full picture. You have a birth announcement missing key details. You have a presentation that broke from royal tradition. You have a birth certificate that was quietly amended. You have a hospital that declined to release information. You have a physician who walked away from her practice shortly after the birth. You have protocols that were reportedly bypassed. You have a monarch who allegedly found out about the birth from the news rather than from the parents directly. And you have a globally watched interview that brought even more questions to the surface, questions that got buried under the emotional weight of the moment. Each of these points, taken alone, might be explainable. People make different choices, traditions evolve, privacy matters, but taken together, they form a pattern that's hard to ignore and even harder to explain away with simple answers. What makes this story so fascinating and so frustrating for those who want clear answers is that Harry and Meghan have never been shy about sharing their story. They wrote books, they gave interviews, they produced documentaries, they spoke publicly about some of the most intimate and painful moments of their lives. They were not silent people. They were not private people, at least not when the narrative suited them. So the selective silence around certain specific details of their children's births stands out even more sharply against the backdrop of everything else they chose to share. Why speak openly about so much and go so quiet about this? That's the question that sits at the center of all of this. And it's a question that has never been answered in a way that fully satisfies the people asking it. Royal biographers, people who have spent decades studying the monarchy, who understand its traditions inside and out, who have documented births, marriages, and moments of crisis across generations, have reportedly found themselves stumped. Not because the questions are unreasonable, but because the answers simply aren't there. The documentation that should exist either wasn't made public or doesn't appear to exist in the expected form. And for an institution built on record-keeping, tradition, and public accountability, that absence is remarkable. The British monarchy has survived for centuries, precisely because it maintained a level of transparency, even in its most guarded moments, that gave the public confidence in its legitimacy. Every generation of royals understood that their position came with a responsibility to be seen, verified, and documented. Not because the public had a right to invade their privacy, but because the institution they represented demanded a certain standard of public accountability. Harry and Meghan pushed back against that standard loudly, publicly, and unapologetically. They framed their privacy choices as acts of self-preservation and protection, and many people supported them for it. But the consequences of those choices, the gaps they created, the questions they left unanswered, the traditions they abandoned, have followed them ever since. And at the center of all those consequences, two children, Archie and Lilibet, whose births became the most scrutinized and debated in modern royal history. Not because the public wants to harm them or question their worth as human beings, but because the circumstances surrounding their arrivals into the world were handled in ways that broke from everything that came before, and nobody has ever fully explained why. So now the question lands squarely with you. After everything, the missing doctors, the amended certificates, the controlled presentations, the silent hospitals, the bypassed protocols, and the carefully managed narratives, what do you believe? Do you think Harry and Meghan handled all of this simply because they wanted privacy? Or do you think there are details about these births that the public still hasn't been told? Is Archie's story exactly what it's been presented as, or are there chapters of this royal tale that haven't been opened yet? Drop everything you're thinking in the comments below, every theory, every question, every reaction. This conversation is just getting started. And if this video had your mind working overtime, make sure you hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to see it, subscribe so you never miss what's coming next, and turn on notifications. Because trust us, the next one is going to be just as eye-opening. See you there!